Got questions about corned beef? Well, I happen to be a corned beef expert, so I'm gonna show you this dish plus 3 of my favorite corned beef leftover dishes. Keep watching. I'm Yankel, and today we are all about corned beef. So if you're standing there with a package of corned beef in your hand, wondering what to do with it, wondering, is it cooked? Is it not cooked? It says uncured. What does that mean? We're gonna solve all of that for you. I'm gonna show you my take on your classic Irish boiled dinner, and I'm also gonna show you 3 of my favorite alternative corned beef recipes. So let's get started with the boiled dinner, and we're actually gonna go Instant Pot boiled dinner because it's gonna save us a whole bunch of time. And so before I even open up the corned beef, I'm gonna get the vegetables into the Instant Pot. Now, this is a huge time saver. Got potatoes and carrots, and I cut the carrots to be about the same size as the potatoes. I'm leaving the potatoes whole because they retain their texture and they're gonna cook evenly. Going right into the pot. Beautiful. And then for our cabbage, I'm using a smaller Instant Pot, so I've got room for about a half a head of cabbage, but you can use a whole one if you've got room for it. The only thing to pay attention to is once you've cut your cabbage in half, there's a basically inedible core here that you want to get rid of. And so after I've sliced my cabbage in half, I'm gonna make a triangle cut, like so. And one more time, like so. And I just remove that core. And then I can slice it any way I like. I'm gonna leave long wedges because I like the way it presents on the platter. And also it'll retain a little bit more texture. And I'm just gonna pull off a couple of the outer leaves and discard that. And those will go right in on top of other vegetables. Beautiful. All right, now for our uncured ButcherBox corned beef brisket. So it comes from the brisket, like it says, and it can be from the flat or the point, and that'll just mean it's got more fat or less fat on it, but there'll always be a nice little layer of fat that's gonna add a ton of texture, a ton of flavor, and really just melt away in the sauce. Historically, corn is actually a reference to salt and to salting, and it was a way of preserving the meat for longer. You'll see maybe some differences out there between red corned beef and gray corned beef. Gray corned beef is really something that's just pure salt. Comes with a beautiful little spice packet, and these are just classic spices. You got a blend of, coriander and mustard and celery seed, and don't skimp on the spice packet, and feel free to add more of your own. But the flavors are really nice. So I'm going right in there with that. A little bit of my tomato. That's sort of the Jewish style brisket, and then some beef stock. That's gonna go in there. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna close it up. We're gonna go high pressure, and we're gonna go 50 minutes on high pressure, and then we're gonna let it rest. So I have the keep warm setting for at least half an hour. And at that point, you should get a nice, beautiful, tender brisket. And while we let it cook, we're going to put together 3 of my all-time favorite corned beef options. First in my lineup of my favorite things to do with corned beef besides the boiled dinner. So it's gonna be a Reuben sandwich, and I'm not changing a single thing, except for one. I did put barbecue sauce on this corned beef. And I cooked this off earlier so that I could show you these 3 alternatives. And I think that a little bit of barbecue sauce, any kind really, the base of barbecue sauce matches the flavors of corned beef perfectly. So, one thing to pay attention to when you're cutting corned beef or brisket or really any piece of meat is the direction of the grain, and you want to slice against it to get a nice tender cut. And so we'll see directional grain running this way, and so we're going to cut against that perpendicular to get a nice tender bite. And that looks really good. That looks really good. So I'm actually going to save the end piece for a separate dish that I'll show you in just a moment. But for our sandwich, let's go nice and thin. So good. Oh man, I don't know if I can wait. I don't know if everyone else here can wait. Medium high heat, butter, open face, Set your bread in the butter. Cheese goes on the bread. How much cheese you like will depend on how much cheese you get. I like a lot of cheese. Russian dressing. Right on top. If you're a big lover of Russian dressing, hit it on both sides. I personally am a huge fan of Russian dressing. Next up, sauerkraut. Not a huge fan of sauerkraut, except on the Reuben sandwich. You know who's a fan of sauerkraut? My mom. Got a lot of it growing up. Maybe that's why I'm not such a huge fan of sauerkraut. And then finally, we're just gonna go right onto the sandwich. Let's see, with our corned beef. Now, whenever I'm making a deli sandwich, I do like to curl up the meat a little bit instead of just lying it flat, give it some texture, give the sandwich some body. I just feel like it's a better experience. I don't know. I've been doing it this way since I was a kid. I'm gonna keep doing it this way. I think it looks better. I think it tastes better. I think it's more fun to eat. So we're just gonna wait for the bottoms to toast up a bit, close it up, and we're ready. Who's hungry? I see some hands raised. So you see, as I complete the sandwich, my cheese is already melted. All the components are hot. Bread is beautifully toasted. So I've built the sandwich while heating everything each stage of the way. And that's my tip for making a quick grilled cheese / corned beef / Reuben sandwich. The last tip is if you're slicing open something with cheese in it, let it rest for like 30 seconds. That's all before you cut it open. Well, that's a Reuben sandwich. I can't think of a better way to eat corned beef, whether it's all you do with it or whether it's just your leftovers. Well, let's move on. Next up, we're gonna do corned beef hash. Corned beef hash is definitely one of my favorite breakfast foods, so I always make sure I keep enough corned beef around or I have enough leftovers to make it happen. Today I'm just doing corned beef and I'm doing diced potato and I'm doing white vinegar. And then we're gonna put some sunny side up eggs on top and we're gonna do it with some roasted tomatoes. And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm going to dice up the corned beef into pretty small pieces. I think that's probably plenty for me, but I'm not sharing today. So we're gonna go small. Basically, you know, anytime you're doing a hash, you're gonna look for little chunks. Everything should be cut fairly equal in size. So we're gonna match the potatoes here. And I have to speed up the process a bit, and also so that I don't end up really overcooking the corned beef beyond what I've already cooked it to, I've steamed the potatoes just to the point where they are fully cooked through. You can see it's just falls apart if I put some pressure on it, but it still retains its texture. So we're gonna go oil in the pan, and you know, your favorite oil. If I had some bacon fat lying around, that is what would be going in here. Let's go in with our corned beef. And the corned beef will actually add a lot of its own fat and flavor as well. Fat and flavor. When I open a restaurant, well, I'll just name it that. Fat and flavor. Oh man, that smells good. Going right in with our potatoes. We're gonna get a nice little sear on them. Stir all that up, and then we're gonna let it sit in the pan and let a crust build on one side, because the key to a good corned beef hash is that brown crust that happens when you just let it sit on that hot surface. If you go to a diner and you get a good corned beef hash, they just spread it out on the flat top and it just sits. So let's mix it up and let it sit. So because the corned beef is pretty salty already, I'm just adding a touch of salt for the sake of the potatoes. And a dash of black pepper for just a little bit of spice, and a splash of white vinegar. You need a little bit of acidity to cut through what is very rich meat, and of course potatoes. As soon as that moisture cooks off, we're gonna start to build that beautiful sear on the bottom. Meanwhile, let's do some sunny side up eggs. Looks like our moisture is pretty much burnt off here and our crust is starting to build up, so I'm just going to make sure that everything has good contact with the bottom of the pan. And I'm just going to make a little room here on the side. And I'm going to put these tomatoes in. And I just love the color of the pop and a little bit, at least I can say I ate a vegetable today. Right into the pan. Looking good so far. I feel good about it. Oh, look at that beautiful crust right there. That's perfect. Right in the center. Got to be able to cut that egg open and have it mix with everything. It's really, the egg is what makes this dish come alive. Brings it all together. Egg right on top. Corned beef hash with ButcherBox corned beef will knock your socks right off. All right, last thing on my list, burnt ends. Now, typically you do them with a smoked brisket, but today we're doing it with corned beef leftovers. But we're going to lean right into that smoky barbecue flavor. And so what I did was I had braised this corned beef brisket in some barbecue sauce, and then I reserved some of that braising liquid, plus I have a little bit more barbecue sauce. And I'm going to saute the heck out of it in my nonstick skillet. You can also throw it in the oven at 475 for about 20 minutes, and you're gonna get a really nice caramelized burnt end dish. For these, I'm gonna go a little bit bigger, nice big chunks. Just remember, when you're working at really high heat, don't walk away. Pay attention to what's going on. This one is all about the crunchy bits and that caramelization and the slightly burnt sauce, sticky, sweet. We're gonna go right in there. And I like to use the non-stick for this because when we're burning sugar in a pan, it can get real tough to clean. So we're just gonna let that simmer for a little bit, let the sauce reduce. Almost till it's gone. Everything's gonna get beautifully coated and it's gonna look and smell absolutely amazing. Now I'm gonna wipe the burning hot, sticky barbecue sauce off my arm. So you can keep an eye on this when you're doing it because your barbecue sauce, the sugars are going to caramelize pretty quickly, and it's gonna let you know it's gonna reach that burning point as the bubbles start to grow in size. So if you're looking into that pan, you see those bubbles start to grow and the sound is gonna get louder and you're gonna hear the sugar actually start to burn. You're gonna see smoke start to rise all around the edges. You really just wanna keep it moving. That's not a bad thing, but if you let it just sit there, it's gonna turn black, which we don't want. I think we're ready to go. We're gonna go right on to this platter. Gosh, that is just a dream dinner for me. I think our boiled dinner is done. At least the machine told me it was done. Let's take a look. And it only gets better. If you're doing this in a crock pot, you can do it on high for 5 hours and you're gonna get a beautiful corned beef. You can do it on low for 8 to 10 hours and you're gonna get a really nice corned beef. If you're doing it in the oven, 350 for 3.5 to 4 hours. On the stovetop, a nice simmer, it's gonna take you 2 to 3 hours. And those are your options, and all of them work really, really well. Gosh, I just can't have corned beef if it doesn't remind me of the deli. That's how I love it. And you can just see how tender that corned beef is. It's ready to fall apart. So for our sauce, Very simple. Dijon mustard. Equal parts. A little or a lot, depending on how much you need. Mayonnaise. Let's go with half a lemon. So in this case, 1/4 cup of Dijon mustard, 1/4 cup of mayonnaise, half a lemon for quantity. And finally, if you can find it, fresh grated horseradish packs a big punch, so a little goes a long way. If you can't find it, typically you can find some already grated in a jar white horseradish. Often it'll be in the seafood section of your local grocery store, or oddly around the yogurts. But hey, I didn't design grocery stores. That looks really good. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt and pepper. Give that a little stir, and we have just a super simple, creamy mustard horseradish sauce that's gonna cut right through all of that fatty, beefy meatiness, that like ultra comfort food that really is what you get out of a boiled dinner. It's so good. One of the great things about doing a boiled dinner is that you do everything at once. One of the important things to pay attention to is the size that you cut everything to make sure that it all cooks nicely and evenly. It's gonna fall apart. There's nothing we can do about it. That is a super tender, fall apart, melt in your mouth, fork tender, spoon tender, don't need utensils, boiled dinner. Oh my God. And the result of all that resting time is just an incredibly moist, juicy piece of beef. Gosh, that looks good. I'm gonna go with nice thick slices. It smells incredible. Those herbs, the seasoning, the spices, everything coming together right now. Oh man, God, that smells really, really good. I am psyched for St. Paddy's Day. That's all I have to say about corned beef. Go make something delicious with it. I'm Yankel. See you in the next one.